Hello everyone and welcome to SuttonsDaze and to this week's canning chat. I am super excited to be here this week. I hope you are too. We have a bunch of good questions, just over 6 pages, so let's jump in and get started. Pantry Pal asks, can you can sauerkraut salad? If so, do you water bath it? I'm not sure I know what sauerkraut salad is. You can sauerkraut, and I will put the link for that down below from the National Center of Home Food Preservation, and I hope that that answers your question. Otherwise, let me know what sauerkraut salad is. We have Elizabeth S. who says, have you used canning lids from Lehman's? I bought some last year and still haven't tried them. Nervous, hate to have a batch not seal. So some things, sometimes things don't seal. That will happen with just about any canning lid that you use. Lehman's has always had a great reputation, and I believe that they are a very good lid. They have been sold and used for a very long time. So jump in, do it, trust the process. You got this. The next one is actually a similar question from 3 different people. So Mary Spurlock, Pawpaw's Georgia Girl, and Adrian 107, yes, all asked a question about Headspace and is it important? Okay, so the simple answer is that leaving the specified amount of headspace in a jar is important to assure a vacuum seal. If too little headspace is allowed, the food may expand and bubble out when air is being forced out from under the lid during the process. If the bubbling food may leave a deposit on the rim of the jar or the seal of the lid and prevent the jar from sealing properly. If too much headspace is allowed, the food at the top is likely to discolor. Also, the jar may not seal properly because there will not be enough processing time to drive all of the air out of the jar. Headspace, pardon me, is super, super important. So use the recommended headspace in all of the different canning processes that you do, whether it be water bath or whether it be pressure canning. Thank you. And sometimes you'll start off with the proper headspace and it may decrease. Sometimes if you're doing like pie filling, it will increase because it expands. So there's a little finesse with a couple of things, but for the most part, your headspace should be true and should stay true. We'll actually discuss something similar in one of the questions coming up. So really great question. I hope that that answered that for you. Brad Clark asks, canned some white potatoes and parboiled them for 2 minutes, but they are too mushy for me after canning. Might be rebel, but can I skip the parboiling and jar them after cutting? Still adding the boiling water and process for 40 minutes. Also, the ball book said 2 to 3 pounds of potatoes per quart. Not even close. Had 20 pounds and ended up with 14 quarts. So the simple answer regarding the blanching of the potatoes is that the blanching releases some of the starch, okay? And it also, potatoes by their nature, will absorb some of the water in the canning process. So if they're not blanched, they're going to absorb more of the water in the jar, which will alter your headspace, okay? It can, the blanching them reduces cloudiness, and that's the starch. And, it's just one of the things that's done. Starch is not a huge issue, and it depends on what kind of potato you're talking about too. I specifically like canning with yellow gold potatoes, not yellow, gold potatoes, because they put out less starch. Now, it is rebel, okay, but I don't tend to parboil my potatoes for 2 minutes because, especially with the golden ones, I found that it's not, it doesn't impact the starch that much. If you're using Idaho's, then yeah, that's going to be a big difference when you're canning, and you'll notice a lot more starch. I mean, they'll cloud right up. It'll not be translucent in any way, shape, or form. So something to consider, and the water in the jar is something to consider. Don't alter your headspace assuming that it's going to suck up more water, because again, keep your headspace the way it is. I just said I don't blanch them, so that may be, give it a try, see how you like it. I don't think that it impacts the validity of the food that's in the jar by not doing it. It just changes how it looks afterwards. So I hope that answers your question. Excuse me. Country Roads. I don't know if you've answered this question before. I need to can some ground meat. I also have some broth to can. Is it okay to do them together so I have a full canner? I will process them for 90 minutes. Absolutely, it is okay. Go ahead and do it. Mackenzie Shelley Lee Johnson asks, greetings from Western Canada. Hello. Does venting 10 minutes time begin immediately following any steam exiting through the spout or once the safety valve pops up? Okay, the safety valve has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. And there's going to be somebody who, argues this point with me, but I've mentioned it in a couple of my videos that what you're looking for is a steady stream of steam. Okay, so you put that lid on and you get it, you turn on the heat and you let it go till you see that steady stream of steam, and then you start your timer. You're not paying attention to that lock pop at all, because some canners it'll pop up and some canners it won't until you put the regulator on there. Okay, so you want to wait for a steady stream of steam and then start your 10-minute timer. At 10 minutes, you want to put your regulator on there, whether it's the regulator or the jiggler, and then make sure that it comes up to the pressure or the jiggling. Then start your timer for the time needed to process whatever you're canning. If the jiggler is not up at the end of that 10 minutes, or I'm sorry, if the pop lock is not up at the end of that 10 minutes, it will pop up once you put the regulator on. It will, I promise. If it doesn't, then it's stuck. And so then you have to, do your thing to get it up. But I hope that answers your question. Victor's Farming Adventures. I have been water bath canning for about 5 years, just going to break into doing pressure canning tomorrow. I really don't have a question. I do have some concerns about pressure canning. I really do not want to blow up my pretty stove and kitchen. So, okay, so the kitchen can go, LOL. And I'm here to tell you it wasn't really a question, but trust the process. You got this. You really do. And once you're doing it, you're going to go, oh, I wish I hadn't waited so long. Newbie Steaders asks, I'm new to canning and making jams and jellies. I've seen some YouTubers put a tiny bit of butter when making jam and jelly to prevent foam. Is this okay to do? Would you recommend it, not recommend it? I've mentioned it actually in a lot of my jam and jelly videos, because it's one of those things that Ball or the National Center for Home Food Preservations recommend, because it is supposed to remove the foam that's created. What I have found is that the foam dissipates anyway. So, I've made all kinds of jams and jellies. I don't add any kind of butter to it. And I, just keep stirring it, and it creates a foam. It's a natural thing. And then when I go to jar it up, the foam just dissipates. It just goes away. A lot of people have great memories of scooping off that foam and putting it on a plate, and it's a treat for the kids or the family or anything like that. It's jam. And if it all dissipates, it's just jam. So I don't think it's necessary. I really don't. It depends on how particular you are about your jams and jellies in the jar. I've never had foam be an issue. I hope that answers your question. Kenneth Neese asks, have you tried the Nesco electric pressure canner? My electric stove has that safety feature on it, and I have a hard time using my pressure canner on it, so I'm thinking about doing this. I cannot, in good conscience, endorse or recommend any kind of electric pressure canner. I do not believe that they have been adequately tested. I do not believe that they are safe for the long term. And so I just can't. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Shannon Reeder asks, I have a question on storing. I don't have a lot of open shelving. Can I store canned jars in an extra dresser or buffet? Nothing laying on its sides. Absolutely. We have Carol, who is a member of our Facebook group, and she utilizes dresser drawers to put her jars in. Anywhere that you can put them, again, I wouldn't put them on their side, but anywhere that you can put them where you're not going to forget about them, cool, dark place, it's perfect. Go ahead and do your due. Congratulations. Susan Smith, how you doing, Susan? So the husband was watching one of your vids and said, wow, that looks good. So buy what you need. Do I always do what he says? No, but this time I did. I got the 23-quart Presto canner, extra ring, plug, racks, the red scoop, the funnel with the headspace that marks with the headspace marks, the 2020 green USDA book, and of course the jiggler. So the question is, I'm disappointed with the booklet that came with the canner because all the recipes are for the gauge, not the jiggler. I'm below 1,000 feet here in the Finger Lakes region of New York, and I want to use the jiggler. So if for ground meat it says to use 11, can I use 10 or do I go up to 15? I will be contacting state reps about getting things changed. Awesome. Good. So what I'm going to refer you to is the National Center for Home Food Preservation, Susan. Okay. Go there and look, and they actually have different graphs. They have it for the regulator and they have it for the weighted regulator. Okay. And you want to use the one for the for the weighted regulator. Thank you. And a dime to a dollar says it's going to say to use 10 pounds of pressure. Okay. But you want to be sure with that because some of them change. And if you are, some of them change and say to use 15. So just to be safe, use what is on the National Center for Home Food Preservation site and you'll be good to go. You are going to love doing all of this. Way to go, hubby. Nice, nice. Diamond Gardner asks, I love pink grapefruit juice. Grapefruits are usually on sale when they are in season, I think November. Anyway, can citrus juices be canned? I have found nothing that has a safe recommended recipe for canning citrus juice itself. I'm sorry. Yoda63. The USDA recipes for canned baked beans and pork and beans say to add ham or bacon, so there is a precedent for adding a small amount of cured meat as seasoning. Excellent point, and honestly not one that I had paid attention to. So I will put a link down below. I went through and read it. The National Center for Home Food Preservation has a baked bean recipe that actually uses bacon. They are very specific about how much, what size, all that stuff. And that's because that is exactly what they have tested. So definitely check out that link if you're interested in an approved recipe using ham or bacon in your baked beans. Thank you. Great find. Really great find. Ethel Tilton says these chats are valuable. I'm so glad. I have a 2-year-old 22-quart Mero canner with a jiggle type weight instead of a pressure gauge. The problem, on the bottom of the inside, several irregular shaped pitted places have formed. It's pretty pitted. You can dig your fingernails right down into the pits. I don't know why these formed. We have city water, a water softener, and I usually do remember the 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Maybe forgot 2 or 3 times. Do you think it's manufacturer's defect or did I do something? These newer canners are not as thick as the really old ones used to be, and I'm afraid it will corrode all the way through. Otherwise, I really like the canner. Having a pitted bottom is not a good thing, okay? That means that structurally it is compromised. So it's not something that I would continue using, especially if they're as deep as you're saying, right? I don't use vinegar in my canning process. A lot of people do. A lot of people will probably comment and say that they always do. I don't. The recommendation for putting vinegar in there is to keep the jars from becoming cloudy. This is especially problematic when you are on well water. We have well water and a water softener, and sometimes, every now and then, my jars come out cloudy. It doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason to it, really. But what I noticed when I use vinegar is that it oxidizes my rings, which shortens the life of my rings. I've found no benefit to adding vinegar to my canner. It is possible with the thinner metal that the vinegar has compromised it a little bit. So I would eliminate the vinegar, but I would look at replacing the canner because with pits the size that you're talking about, it's compromised. In the future, especially because you're on city water, you don't need to add vinegar. It really is a non-issue. I wash my jars every single canning session. I let them sit for a day and then I put them in some warm soapy water. I scrub them up and I rinse them off and I dry them off and I label them. I put them up on the shelf. And somebody brought to my attention that this is very seldom seen on YouTube, the after process. So one of these days I'll get around to doing it. But you have to wash the jars anyway. So the vinegar to me really just doesn't add any benefit at all and actually compromises the future use of my rings and possibly my canner. So I don't use it. A lot of people will say that they don't, they have to have it. It's a must have. So it's something that's up to you, but I would definitely be looking at a different kind of canner. I hope that helped. Kim Stanley. Question, can you do double batches of jams and jellies with Sure-Gel? Not unless they specify that it is a recipe that you can double. I really, without going into a whole bunch, there are reasons with the formulas as to why you're not supposed to double those kinds of recipes. The pomona pectin, you can double and triple those recipes. It's a non-issue. But there's something with the chemical reaction with the dry pectin like that that doesn't really allow you to do that. So I would just go single batch and go from there. Or try pomona pectin. Seriously, it's awesome. I'll put a link down below. Wilma Hughes, do I have to tighten the new Tattler lids when they come out of the canner? I heard you didn't. I'm not sure who you heard that from. So from everything that I have read so far, yes, you still do. Same process as before. You know, when they come out, just snug them down and you'll be good to go. Carol Smith, Lisa, Carol. Let's see. You've inspired me and I've become a canning maniac. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And let's see. My question is, have you ever canned russeteer chicken off the bone? I've been freezing the meat and canning the most delicious broth. Then I got to wondering how good it would be to can the two together for future use in casseroles, soups, etc. What do you think? Would the cooked meat become too mushy or tough? Excellent question, and absolutely can it. Absolutely can it. Chicken can be raw packed, which is ugly chicken, or it can be hot packed, which is cooked chicken. If you raw pack the chicken, you don't add anything to it. You just put it in the jar and you can it. If you hot pack chicken, then you add a liquid or a broth to it, up to an inch headspace. So check out on the National Center for Home Food Preservation, hot packing chicken. You can use that incredible broth that you're creating in with the chicken, can it all up, and you are good to go. I mean, that would make just like the most beautiful instant chicken and gravy, or, you know, any number of things. So yes, absolutely, you can do them both and you will love them. I love using those store-bought chickens like that for bone broth, and having that extra little bit of chicken is a huge bonus. I haven't gotten one in a long time. I'm going to have to pick one up now. Now my mouth's watering. Thanks. Jennifer Spears. I have a Miro 22-quart pressure canner. I am new to pressure canning, but twice now, the top of the weight, the black knob, not stainless weighted bit, has unthreaded itself during the process. Why might this happen, and is it normal? I am thinking that it's not normal. So if you can purchase a new regulator, that would probably be advisable, okay? And you can find those, you know, do a search, go to Miro. But I would probably get a new one, because that should not be happening, and it's not normal. Maggie Martin, can I can turkey that has been brined? Suggestions, raw or cooked? Yes, you can absolutely brine turkey and can it. I don't see an issue with canning it raw, except it might, well, no, you should be fine, because people add salt to their ugly chicken sometimes. So yeah, you could do it raw, or you could do it hot packed with a broth. Either way should be fine. You're good. Do it. Go for it. Phyllis McCall, I canned potatoes for the first time. I must have had siphoning happen. I had an inch headspace before pressure canning. Now my potatoes are 1.5 inches to 2 inch headspace. Will they be okay to store, or should I eat them sooner? I pressure canned them for the right amount of time, but my canner started to go up after 20 minutes, and I turned it down as much as I could, but it remained at 14 pounds when they only needed 11 pounds. So part of that might be the increased pressure, okay, because that's pretty significant. Part of that, and you didn't address it here, I don't know if you blanch them. We mentioned earlier that if you don't blanch them, they tend to suck down water. And even if you do blanch them, they still tend to take up some of the water. But your headspace should not have been that drastically changed. Okay, so you might have had siphoning due to the higher pressure, and they might have taken in some of the water. Yes, they're still safe. They're absolutely still safe, but they will discolor on top of the water. So the ones that have any potatoes on top, I would eat those sooner than later. Okay. Nikki, I have a question about venting. I have the Presto pressure canner, 23 quart. I got it secondhand, so no manual, but I downloaded the digital version. Way to go. When venting, does the stopper lock in the back need to pop up before starting the 10-minute timer? And I didn't realize I had like a dual question here. No, it doesn't. Canners all have their own personalities, every single one. I have 8 canners, and they all have distinct different personalities. Some of them, that pop lock goes up while I'm venting. Some of them, it doesn't go up until I put the regulator on. It really depends. So you want 10 minutes of a steady stream of steam. So once it hits that steady stream of steam, start your clock for 10 minutes. And then once that 10 minutes hits, you want to put the regulator on. And then at some point, the pop lock will come up, because it won't really go up in pressure until that pop lock goes up. Okay. So there's no need to worry about that part. If it doesn't go up after, 10 minutes or so, then it may be stuck. So you're going to have to take a look at that, but you're good to go. It does not have to be up when you are doing your 10 minutes of venting. Good question. Rhonda Pagan. Would our state extension centers have updated information, or even a county extension office with updated information? Not necessarily, and it really depends on what state you live in. I live in the wonderful state of Michigan, and for the most part, I love the wonderful state of Michigan, but I can't stand the extension office. They have no updated information at all, so you really have to dig for it. There are some extension offices, Oregon, Washington, California, just to name a few, Minnesota, who are more active in it, okay? So, it's worth looking around, and I will try to find all of those probably next month. I'll try to find those and create a library for everyone to go to. But then it's a matter of you doing your due diligence to check on them regularly, because they don't notify you when changes happen. But yeah, it's an option. Let's see. Karen Cowley. Cowley? Yes. Can you vent for too long? I didn't remember how long I let my canner vent, but I know it had to be more than 10 minutes. Help. Yeah, you can vent for too long, a half hour or so. But if you're talking 15 minutes instead of 10, no. But by venting it, you're heating that water, creating that steam, venting that steam, which is dissipating the water, okay? So you can vent to the point where you don't have enough water in your canner for the process that you need in order to can whatever's in the canner. That kind of made sense, right? So, set a clock, but 10 minutes is what you should be doing. If you do 15 or 20, it's not a deal breaker. It's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. So go right ahead. Okay. Rachel E. Hickory Hill Homestead. A couple of questions. Okay. I know that when water bath canning, you should turn off the heat, remove the lid, wait 5 minutes. I've heard conflicting information regarding pressure canning. Turn off the heat, bring to zero, remove the lid, remove the jars, or turn off the heat, bring to zero, wait 5 minutes, remove the lid, remove the jars. And so I'm going to tell you what I do, okay? Because what happened, first, what I do is I let it depressurize on its own, okay? And then I let it sit for another 5-10 minutes, and then I unscrew the lid, and then I take the jars out. That 5-10 minute time frame where you're letting it after it's depressurized before you take off the lid, what you're doing is you're letting it just come down a little bit more, because the reaction can be, if the temperature is drastic enough between what's happening in the canner and what's happening in your kitchen, it can actually cause siphoning. And you'll know when it happens, because when you take that lid off, you will hear those things go, they'll just make all kinds of noise. So that is what I do. Is I let it sit 5-10 minutes, after it's depressurized, and then I take off the lid, and then I take them out. If you let it depressurize completely and then immediately take off the lid, you risk siphoning due to the temperature change in the pot and outside of the pot. So that's the safest way that I have found to handle it. The other question is, your husband loves beef tongue. I do not. I joked with him, I will put the whole tongue in a jar and can it. My question is, can I? Would you believe, and I dug hard. There is no data available for the process recommendations, but I'm going to put a link down below because it brings up data from 1966 and before, okay? And it actually does mention, you're going to have to go down, scroll down. It's pretty extensive, but it actually does mention canning tongue. And it gives you recommendations, but they're very old and they are no longer accurate. But for the most part, there is no up-to-date information on whether or not it's safe to can. So I would not do it, but it's worth a read. Check out the link. Sarah Courtney asks, I do have another vinegar question. It's great to know it will not spoil, as I buy 2 gallons almost every month, as I use it for so much non-food stuff too. But my concern is it being in plastic jugs versus glass now for long-term storage. I hadn't thought anything about it until I saw a remark a while back referring to the plastic degrading over time. So that's my concern. What are your thoughts? When I buy vinegar in those, plastic jugs, because like you said, that's what it comes in now. Those jugs are pretty sturdy. I mean, to me, they're more sturdy than milk jugs, definitely more sturdy than water jugs. So, I mean, unless you're looking at 10 years or more, I don't think it's an issue to have it. And it shouldn't degrade in the jugs at all. So you should be good to go. That's my opinion. The final question. Brenda Porter says, Lisa, my last canning project, after venting for 10 minutes, I placed my pressure regulator on. As my pressure canner was coming up to pressure, I heard a loud crack like a jar broke. My question is, should I have turned off the stove, let the canner come back down to pressure, and check to see if all was well? I didn't know what to do, and I let the canner do its thing. After the canning session and time to remove the jars, all were good. I've been canning for 2 years, and this was a new experience. Like you, I would have just kept going. There's no sense in that point at turning back, because you would have risked the other jars being able to seal properly. Okay, so I wouldn't have risked looking. I would have just been like, oh great, I lost a jar. I saw in some of the comments to your question that other people had experienced this also and came up with the same results that you did. I have had jars break, but I have never had anything that sounded that distinctive where there wasn't an issue. So I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's intriguing. But if everything came out okay, you're good. I wouldn't I wouldn't stop it and start over again. I would just go, if it's a loss, it's a loss. Let's just keep rolling, because by then you've already got everything up to temp and all that stuff. And you'd probably have to change the lids if you stopped and restarted, and nobody can afford that kind of do-over with lids nowadays. So great question. Definitely something to pay attention to. It's not something I've run into, but I don't run into everything. So I'm glad that people chimed in on that one. Okay, you guys, that is this week's Canning Chat. I am hoping to be coming to you later this week or weekend with an additional discussion on canning meats. Somebody brought something to my attention. I've got some inquiries out, and definitely keep an eye open for that, because it's kind of mind-boggling. Are you ready? Remember, if you like what we do, please hit that like, subscribe, and share. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook. Until next time, be safe.